Hi there, Agile friends. I'll come in here just with a quick note to let you know that the Agile Online Summit 2022 is coming soon. To know more, check out bit.ly/AOS2022. That's all one word, all lowercase, bit.ly/AOS2022. Now, stick around to the end of the episode if you want to know more, but for now, on to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very special bonus episode on learning to be an awesome Scrum Master, a path-based approach. And we have with us our guest for today, Geoff Watts. Hey, Geoff, welcome back.
Hey, Vasco. Good to see you again, mate.
Absolutely. So Geoff is the founder of Inspect and Adapt, the Agile Licensing Library, Organic Agility, and most recently, which is something we're going to explore even more as we go through the episode today, Agile Mastery Institute. And also one of the most well-respected authors, coaches, and trainers and speakers in the Agile world, in the world of Agile and coaching, rather. And he's written, actually, a joke book on Agile, about Agile. So, Geoff, let's start with one of those jokes from your Pun Mastery book. I love the title, by the way.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, so first of all, I've got to give credit where credit's due. So this is a collaboration between myself, Paul Goddard, and Nigel Baker while we were very bored during lockdown. And we thought maybe we could make it a little fun for people, make people laugh. So you want a joke? All right, so it's a collection of different types of humour. So do you want a joke or do you want a limerick?
Yeah, you'll have to explain for our listeners what you mean by a limerick, because I'm not sure I even know what that is.
Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll do that then. So a limerick is a form of poetry. So it's 5 lines, and it has a particular structure, but it's meant to be, it usually has something about a person in the first line, and there's rhyming, and it's a bit of fun. So we've got an old Agile coach called Felicity. She had no Agile authenticity. She was massively dumb. She knew nothing about Scrum, the completely wrong type of simplicity. So that's a limerick.
There you go. What a
but
limerick!
I'll give you a joke,
you need a little bit of Irish music in the background, so we should
it does have that sort of Celtic lilt to it. But I'll give you a joke as well. So why did this stupid Scrum Master come to work dressed as Elvis?
Don't know. Why did he?
Because he thought he was going to a retrospective. So there you go, Pun Mastery.
And it's is it in Kindle and print form on Amazon, I'm guessing?
Yeah, available in all good bookshops and some pretty terrible ones as well, I expect.
All right. So, Geoff, it's been a while since you've been on the podcast, so let's dive into the topic. And in meantime, as I outlined in the intro, you've been busy creating quite a lot of things, the Pun Mastery book being one of those. But also something that I think has been a long time coming for our community. But before we dive into that, and for those of you who want to know more, stay tuned. I think we need a bit of context here.
All right.
I know that your opinion of Agile certification industry is not very high, so tell us what, in your mind, are the biggest issues you see with Agile certification programs?
Well, so I suppose, the first thing, I suppose it is fair to say that I don't have a high opinion, but that I put myself in that category as well, because I've been a huge part of it. I became a certified Scrum trainer back in 2005. So I've taught a lot of certified Scrum Master classes, certified Scrum Product Owner classes. I've been part of, over the years, helping create and design the curriculum of things like the advanced classes and the certified Agile coach programs. And I think over the years, it's done a huge amount of good. And of course, there's other certification organisations out there like Scrum.org and so on. And I think they've all done a lot of good. These roles, the Scrum Master, Product Owner, so on, Agile Developer, they might not seem radical to many people now, but 20 years ago, or over 20 years, they were incredibly radical. There was no such thing. It just wasn't there. So for somebody to stick their neck out and say, I'm going to be a Scrum Master, was quite brave. And having something that said, I've learned something, I've been verified by the people that have created this, and I know what I'm talking about, was hugely valuable. But I think things have changed, and because of that, I've stopped this year. I've stopped my my delivery of those types of courses, and my mission is to change the thinking, to shift that sort of paradigm within the industry about what I want people to change what they think when they hear Agile certification, because at the moment the accepted norm, I think, is now that when people hear Agile certifications, they think of a 2-day or perhaps a 3-day class, and that's it. And over time, those certifications, certainly what you call the entry level ones, so the first, the one that most people have, for example, a certified Scrum Master or a professional Scrum Master, they're very basically they're a what is Scrum, what is Agile, and what is a Scrum Master, or what is a product owner. And like I said, that's useful, but when you're part of a group of well over 1 million people, and you're expected to be a professional, and you're being hired to be an Agile professional, that's, I would argue, not enough for the individual to be able to do their role effectively and have fulfillment in their work, but also for the organizations who are looking to hire people and develop people. So it's not that I necessarily have a dim view of the industry. I think it's just slowly sleptwalked into something that doesn't add anywhere near as much value as it used to.
Yeah, and I think that aspect of adding value is quite important. So I asked on Twitter what people thought about the certificates. What didn't it prepare them for, right? Like they did the certificate and then they go to the real, what we would call the real world, and as they should, apply empirical understanding, i.e. observe what's going on and feel challenges. What is that? What are those challenges? And there were quite a few. Like, for example, one person on Twitter said that the certificate did not prepare me to handle management. And I asked, so what do you mean by management? And of course, then we talked about, expectations, estimations, performance evaluations, which is something we talked about in the podcast with you and Paul recently. And I think that type of answer, and there were a few others, highlights one aspect, is that a certification, which, by the way, in most of the world is a non-trivial investment by the company or the person themselves, because they are quite expensive, doesn't really prepare us for what is real life.
Yeah,
I do agree with you with the first statement as you started, that the whole certification, the existence of that certification attributed some kind of quality checks to what was being trained, as well as introduced those new roles, those new perspectives in the Agile world first, but then, of course, as it started spreading in the world of work at large. But I feel, at least in my own experience, and that's what I do in my own trainings, I feel that they don't tackle the real life situations, right? Like, I am a big advocate of no estimates, as you know, and many of our listeners do as well. And no estimates is not a topic in the Scrum training, even though it is a huge topic in the Agile community, which the Scrum training tries to serve.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's a lot of good stuff, but just the way that it has evolved, for various reasons, I don't think there's been any kind of ill intent behind it, but I think now you only start to get learning those skills, like, okay, so how can I help a team learn how to estimate? I'm not talking about giving them some rules for estimation, but actually learning about the psychology behind it, the team dynamics behind it, the politics behind it, the complexity behind it, those nuances, and facilitating that, or from a product owner perspective, understanding that and playing a contributory part to that rather than a dysfunctional part to that. You only get those kinds of topics to learn about at the advanced level. And unfortunately, only 2% of people who've taken a CSM or a PSM class go on to that advanced level. So you've got well over 1 million people out there that have the badge of Certified Scrum Master who haven't had that kind of knowledge, haven't had that kind of learning. They're trying to work with a team. They're applying for jobs, and it's just not fair on anyone.
Yeah, and of course, so if we talk about applying for jobs, there is one thing that the certification industry has helped with, which is kind of let's call it like a driver's license style certification, right? Like if you, obviously it's not enough to have a driver's license to go and drive a Formula One, but it's enough to have a driver's license to drive on the road, right? Like it proves that you know the basic rules. It doesn't prove that you're a safe driver. It doesn't prove that you're a good driver. It doesn't even prove that you will not break any rules. It just proves you know the rules, or at least you did at the point when you did the exam.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that there is some value in that. And I fear that, and I don't know, we'll talk about more what you're doing with the Agile Mastery Institute, but I fear that we need to first establish the value of an alternative for the people who are hiring before it becomes a solid contribution to the community. So I'm quite interested from my own evolution and the evolution of the training that I'm preparing as well. I'm quite interested to understand how do you intend to tackle that challenge, right? Because the hiring party needs to say, hey, of course, I trust that the Agile Mastery Institute does, properly good certification and trains people to be ready for the real life situations I expect them to be ready for.
So, yeah, I mean, going back in time a little bit, if I was a hiring manager, if I was looking to hire somebody and I saw something on their CV that said Certified Scrum Master, that would mean a lot. It would stand out because there weren't that many of them. It would say this person is interested in an alternative and new modern way of working. They've either been invested in or they've invested in themselves, and they've learnt the fundamentals, which sets them apart from a lot of the other people. Now, people are getting hundreds, sometimes thousands of applications for a Scrum Master role, and they've all got that certification. So it doesn't mean anything anymore. So what am I offering? What am I hearing as a need? Okay, so these hiring managers, they want to know that this person hasn't just learnt the theory of what Scrum is. They have the skills, they have some practical experience that's been verified and supported. Now, they haven't just gone away and learnt on their own. They've had some guided reflection from an expert. They know the actual skills, and they've practiced the actual skills that are going to be required on a day-to-day basis in that role. Not just the theoretical knowledge, but the practical application. And so I've taken that, plus speaking to people who are new in the role of a Scrum Master and saying, right, practically, no training course could prepare me for my first 6 months in the role. Okay, because it was so different. My experience, even in the same company, my experience was very different from another person who started at the same time as me. No training course could have provided me for that. So how can you support me in my first 6, 12 months in the role? So I've taken those two personas, if you like, and designed, I think, a much more holistic. And you use the word investment when it comes to certification, proper investment from the individual, from the organization, and I think importantly, from the person providing that training/development. So a lot of trainers are very, very good at training. They provide a 2-day experience, and that's the last a lot of those people will ever see of them. All right. So especially because, most, like I said, only 2% of people actually come back to advanced level training. So instead of that, what I'm offering is a long-term, effectively a partnership between the learner and the guide. So I call them a guide, not trainers, because they're doing more than training. They're training, giving them some skills in the role, but also then taking, almost reacting. So there's 6 months worth of coaching support, basically, where the learners are saying, okay, forget the theory. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I'm struggling with. How can I work through this? And the guide's job is to help them, coach them, mentor them, educate them, whatever they need to help them apply the theory to their specific real life over 6 months. And then at the end of that 6 months, provide some more deeper theoretical workshop training. So you've got a combination of, I'm not going to say best practice, but very, very good practice, and learner-specific, pulled, demanded, real-life, ad hoc, experiential reflection.
So it sounds to me that what you're putting together with the Agile Management Institute is a little bit more than a certification.
The Agile Mastery Institute.
Sorry, the Agile Mastery Institute, pardon me. And it's a little bit more than a certification, as I understand it. It is, as you said, like kind of a, I think when we were discussing this by email, you called it a path-based approach?
Yeah, pathway, yeah.
Pathway approach, where the journey of the learner is not does not start and end with the acquisition of knowledge. It continues with the partnership, as you called it, like this reflection together with someone who has experience, who has seen some of those real life situations, if you want to call it, but also. And I know that you've done a lot of work in coaching. You wrote the coach's casebook with your co-author as well. So I'm expecting, and that's what I want to confirm from your perspective, I'm expecting that you're also putting into practice that approach, that background that you have, in that the pathway approach is also based on the learner being coached through those situations, right?
Yeah. And that's a really important part. And forgive me for correcting you on the mastery, because that is really important. So I know it's a word in my books, and to begin with, it was a bit of a play on the word Scrum Master. But the idea of actually not just settling for being good at your role, but actually becoming great, that takes time. So mastery as a concept comes from Bloom back in the 60s, and he talks about the ability to apply knowledge to unpredictable and unfamiliar situations. Okay, so it's not just about learning the answer or a framework or rules. It's being able to take something and apply it in unfamiliar contexts. And that requires trial and error, but also guided reflection. And so it's something that the purpose of the guide, the aim of that guide, is to help people not just internalize the good practice, but to be able to think through situations, hold in their minds multiple different ways of potentially dealing with it, effectively analyze, compare and contrast, and work through and reflect, but also get to a point where they're not dependent upon the guide or an expert. They don't have to keep going back to the guide and saying, can you tell me the right answer here? Because they have a process for working out a good answer in their context. So when somebody asks me, you talk about mastery, Geoff, but 6 months isn't enough to get mastery, and it's not. And this is why it's a pathway. Okay. Now, if I can get students and organizations, hiring managers, past that thought process of a certification is 2 days into a certification is at least 6 months. Okay, I mean, that's a big enough jump anyway. But part of that pathway is to increase the thinking ability to not need the guide at the end of that 6 months. That doesn't mean they finish their journey. Okay, it just means that they are now much more equipped to continue that continuous improvement, or relentless improvement, as that phrase you taught me yesterday, towards mastery. Yeah, mastery might be a goal we never actually fully achieve, and that's okay as long as we're continuing to pursue it. I don't know whether does that make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am familiar with that approach. I mean, you did the coaching training in your earlier years. I think even before you started training Scrum Masters, if I recall correctly. And I did something a lot shorter, but also much longer than a CSM training, which was project management certification way back in the beginning of my career. And when I went into my first Scrum Master certification, I kind of felt disappointed because in my project management training, I had to read several books. I had to have a 4-hour sit down and write in longhand exam to prove that I had the knowledge of having read the books. And after that, I had an interview that lasted more than an hour with 2 experts who were not only drilling me, but actually trying to assess my ability to apply the acquired knowledge to novel situations, which is exactly what you talked about. And so I was very disappointed in the Scrum Master certification. And I know that later on the exams were added to the certification, but we, at least in Europe, don't regard multiple choice exams as a credible way to evaluate knowledge acquisition. Let's put it that way. So I am faced, as part of the community, I am faced with the aspect that with the experience I have, I don't grant any status or value to a CSM certificate. And I am on record as saying, if you apply to a job in my company, please do highlight that you appreciate the Scrum certificate so that I can exclude you from selection. Because I don't think that a Scrum certification, although it might be necessary, prepares anyone for real life. Yeah. Right? I would much rather somebody say, hey, I went through this very difficult situation. Here's a blog post about it. I appreciate that a lot more. So I appreciate that pathway approach that you just described. And I think we need to help also Scrum Masters understand what are the goals that they will achieve by going through this pathway. So I'm the Scrum Master, Luke the Scrum Master, as we often call it here on the podcast. I've just completed the first 6 months of your pathway program. How do I feel? How am I different at that point?
Yeah. So, and yeah, I think everyone's going to. This is something that myself and the guides have been talking a lot about recently, and trying to start gathering some significant empirical data. And because, so bear with me, because this might sound like I'm going to give you a very. I'm not really going to answer your question, but bear with me. So, because every Scrum Master is different. Okay, both personally in terms of their skill sets and their preferences and their mindsets and learning styles and so on, but also the team and the organizational context they find themselves in. They're going to come along to the start of this pathway from a very different place. And so the goal of the pathway is to give everybody, to some degree, a consistent experience. Okay, so they all learn about a number of characteristics and skills that will help them in general as a Scrum Master. So the ability to listen well, the ability to actually challenge the status quo without getting fired, the ability to come up with different ways of doing things, the ability to engage people and so on. So all of those things are skills that they will all experience. But in that time, they will all experience different real life scenarios. So they will then be pulling what they need. So they will be set up with a nice baseline, and by the end of that 6 months, will have had support in their own real challenges. So whatever need they had over those 6 months, they will have some support and some practical experience in, and in general, a lot more confidence and self-sufficiency and momentum in the role. Yeah,
absolutely. So if I translate this to Luke's words, right? So if I'm Luke, the Scrum Master, having gone through pathway, then I have had concrete support and help in reflecting through the real life situation I'm going through at the moment. Yeah. And not only have I gotten the tools and opportunity to learn the skills as you described, but I've also had the opportunity to bounce off ideas, to maybe even get help in defining concrete specific experiments I can run in my job with my team or stakeholders that I'm working with. And then at the end, I think that was one thing that you mentioned I think is very important. At the end, there's another workshop, right? Like, what was your goal with that final end of the 6-month workshop?
Well, when you're talking about a Scrum Master, when you're talking about a product owner, an Agile team member, an Agile coach, whoever, there's a heck of a lot to learn. And learning, in my experience, not only is sort of sequential, so it builds on top. You need some baseline, and then you can build on top of those skills after a bit of practice. But it also takes repetition. So while the actual exercises and sort of theoretical knowledge will be different in workshop 2, it will be based on the same skills. So there's an element of familiarity, there's a building block. So it will take what we learned 6 months ago, build on it, incorporating the practical experience that we've done, the actual stuff that you can't necessarily teach in advance, and some more models, some more experiences, some more tools, some more techniques, but reinforcing it as well. And it's so the other important part of this really is the cohort nature of it. So those people who come on workshop 1 are the same people that you will be having coaching with, that you will be coming back to on workshop 2, that you will be part of a community with, where you can share real-time chat, challenges, encouragement, support, experiences. And the idea that I'm starting a new training course on Thursday for me, for my skills. And the idea of just having 1 day or 2 days exposure to the expert that I want to gain some skills from scares me, because I think I'm under a lot of pressure to remember everything there and then. That's the only time I get to speak to them. Well, in this pathway model, you have constant access to the guide. You don't have to remember everything. Plus, you're getting the videos of the workshop, so you can go back and revisit some of the skills that you went through 6 months ago, and that weren't top of your mind. You can ask some clarifying questions. So this consistency, and it's almost like a team. So these cohorts that I run already, sometimes they're all from the same company, sometimes they're from different companies, but you get that sense of everyone wants each other to be successful. You're sharing experiences. You're all learning from other people's learning as well. So you're amplifying that. You're magnifying it. Sorry, I'm waffling. I get a bit talkative when I get passionate.
No, I think that you're talking about a very important point. You said something that I want to highlight. Like when we have that training, which is 1 or 2 days, we have the pressure of trying to remember everything we want to ask. But on top of that, there's another 20 people who also want to ask everything. And on top of that, there's enough content to fill all the time with just the trainer speaking. And that creates, I think, contradictory dynamic in many of the certified courses, which is this kind of dilemma that the trainer, and I've been a trainer in other courses, and I feel this, there's this dilemma between, okay, I need to serve the students in the room, but I also need to give them all of this other knowledge. And it creates a conflict. And if you have the opportunity to do the coaching and guided reflection later on, then part of that pressure, at least, is taken off, because, the group will continue for 6 months. Now, obviously, I think it's quite clear what the value is for an early in their career Scrum Master, someone who has maybe a little bit of experience, but not too much. But I think it's important for us to also reflect on how this type of training and support is so critical for people who are more experienced. So from your perspective, and as you design the pathway, what would you say are the key contributions for those of us that have already, say, 3-5 years experience as a Scrum Master?
Well, I think that's a really interesting question. I think it opens up another can of worms. I'm not sure whether that's a phrase that translates particularly well, but because I think you could take 20 people who've all had 3 to 5 years experience with being a Scrum Master or a product owner, and they would be so different in terms of their skills, their experience, their attributes. And so I think it's very difficult. I did think about this, and I thought, well, let's take a poll of all the sort of 5-year experienced Scrum Masters that I know, and they're all so different. But the good thing from my perspective is that all of the skills that I spend my time coaching, mentoring, educating, they're not binary. All right. So listening, can I listen or not? Well, to a degree, but can I get better at listening? Almost always. And if I don't focus on that for a while because I'm focusing on something else, does my listening ability degrade? Yeah, yeah. So all of those people will always need to be focusing on developing, practicing their listening, their ability to be disruptive, their tactfulness, their change agency, their political acumen, their resourcefulness, all of those different things. So it doesn't matter almost where you are in terms of your experience, because you can almost always develop those skills. And for me, the beauty of this cohort approach is actually having a bit of diversity within that skill set is a benefit. So you've got someone who's really, really good at active listening, but they haven't really done a huge amount of change agency, for example. And you've got someone who's really good at going in and making change happen and influencing people and building up alliances and networking and so on, but they haven't really done a lot of coaching. And those people are teaching themselves. They're supporting each other over time as well. They're building up that almost support network of students.
I think that's very important. I had an argument with a friend recently where we were talking about the value of education, right? And there's this idea that, if you go to certain universities or if you get certain certificates, you're definitely better at that job or position or whatever that is. And one of the things that I kind of, at least in my own experience, and I gave a few examples, one of the things that I remember from school is that school was incredibly valuable at building a network of people that later on became not only friends, but actually help you out in your career.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if I look at training, I would say, me personally, that's one of the benefits I look from training. And this is also why I think something like what you guys provide in the Agile Mastery Institute is so important, because the people who want to go there are the people you want to network with. They are those that want to become great. They are those that live relentless improvement, right? And especially those that have experience and want to go back and do some training and do some guided reflection and be supported in their journey, because they accept that even though they might already be very good, they can become better.
Oh, I'm glad you said that. If you can allow me to just be selfish for a minute and indulge me from a personal perspective, as Geoff, who in the past has run some, I'll say it, some pretty amazing 2-day classes, right? But for me, there was almost always at least one person in there who was coming to get the piece of paper, or someone who had been told by their organization, you need to go to this. And I felt for those people. They didn't really want to be there. And no matter how much information, no matter how valuable I can make it for them, no matter how many jokes I tell, all right, they didn't want to be there. And over time, I found strategies for engaging them more. But what I've noticed since running these pathway cohorts is that all of those people are in it for the long term. They are there because they really want to grow. No, there are no prisoners here. Okay, because this is much more of an investment for the organization or they are paying for it. They are doing this to become really, really good at what they do and get more fulfillment out of their role, to set themselves apart, to set themselves up for success. And that, as an educator, as a coach, is incredibly fulfilling. So yeah. I know it's selfish, but it allows me to enjoy my job a heck of a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally see that. That has been also my experience. And that's why, for example, I have been in my career also so active in local communities, because that I get my kicks out of talking to people who also want to make things better, who also want to change the world of work, right? And I think if we really want to be good at what we do, we need to seek out those communities. And I'm betting you guys do that. By design at the Agile Mastery Institute, you put together those communities, those groups of people. So if people want to know more, Geoff, where should they go?
Well, I've just launched a brand new website, which I think is amazing, but then I would, because it's kind of my baby. It's the just agilemasterinstitute.com. Okay. I mean, if you want, it doesn't take a lot to find me. I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn. I've got my free Agile Mastery community, agilemastering.mn.co. You can email me. You can get me on YouTube or anything. I'm there. Instagram. So yeah, if all else fails, just get in touch with Vasco because he'll just forward you on to me. But come and have a look at the website. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely. I will put the link on the show notes, make sure people find it easily, and check out the Agile Mastery Institute and, of course, the offerings that Geoff and the team have put together. Geoff, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge.
Oh, amazing. Love speaking to you. And thanks very much for having me.
Hi there, Agile friends. Thank you for sticking around to know more about this year's Agile Online Summit. The summit will have 4 keynotes and 4 tracks you will not want to miss. The keynotes will touch on critical topics for us, from delivering on time to helping you to focus on sustainability. The 4 tracks are tools, so we'll focus on tools you need to excel at your job, but also your mission. We'll also have a track on sustainability, which is, of course, about people and their sustainable pace, but it's also about how do we bring sustainability to the products and the planet we inhabit. We'll have a 3rd track about happiness, talking about doing what we love and, most crucially, loving what we do. And finally, the 4th track will be live. It will be mostly hands-on sessions to help you roll up your sleeves together with the presenters. Oh, and we will also have a coaching clinic, as we usually do, organized to help you discuss and get inspired to solve the hardest challenges you face at work. This year, we'll have a special emphasis on interaction with your peers, so get your ticket and join the Slack at bit.ly/AOS 2022. As always, we have free tickets for anyone that wants to attend live, and the VIP tickets for those of you who want to keep the videos forever. So check them out at bit.ly/AOS 2022. I'll see you on the conference floor. We really hope you liked our show. And if you did, why not rate this podcast on Stitcher or iTunes? Share this podcast and let other Scrum Masters know about this valuable resource for their work. Remember that sharing is caring.